Good afternoon. My name is Butch Bateman, and I'm on the board of the directors of the Heritage Museum of Montgomery County. Today is September the 1st, 2011, and this is a continuation of the series of the museum's oral history program. Today we are very pleased to have a longtime resident, Mr. Don Granger. We are sitting today in his hardware store in Granger, Texas. And I'm going to introduce Don. Greetings, Don. Thank you. Thank you for joining us in this.
Thank you, sir.
Please tell us, how long have you been in Montgomery County? Where did you come from?
Well, actually, I was born in Morgantown, West Virginia, January 21st, 1929. And the reason my father was up there is because he and his family came here in 1907 from Chicago. And my grandfather bought 555 acres from the state of Texas for $2 an acre. And my house that we have over there now, Dad built that in about 36 to 37. That's where they lived about 3 years. They had it built up off the floor and had some sides and a tent over it. They lived there 3 years before they built the house back here where this greenhouse. This is a 26-acre tract right here.
Don, when your father bought the property, was there a highway or road coming through here at the time?
It wasn't my father, it was my grandfather.
Grandfather, okay.
Dr. Edwin Granger, and that's where I got my middle name because his first name is Edwin.
Okay.
The survey is in the Kalesky survey. That was my grandmother. I did not know because they both passed away before 1920. I was born 29. They lived there. Then they built a house up there in 1910. Let's see, 10. Mm-hmm. And the way they built it, he wanted, you had to have water wells. You dug wells out there. So he dug a well right next to the house, and he put his porch out over on it, so you wouldn't have to go out in the rain or the weather, and he had the water well right there.
That's good.
In 1920, it burned down, and I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, that one reason later on he wanted to build this house over here because that's where they lived 3 years before they built it up there.
That's it.
So my grandparents and my uncle, there was Sunday was the oldest. She was a girl. Grant, Win Granger, and Don Granger. D.D. Granger, they called it. Don Win, Don Born.
So you had how many brothers and sisters?
I had one sister.
One sister.
And that's Charlotta. She was born in Logan, West Virginia.
Okay.
Daddy had a glass shop there. The reason he went up there, he went up at Nebraska to business school up there. And he received a diploma up there. In 1982, I believe it was, 83, we went up there into this Lincoln Business School and found his paperwork in there back in the 20s that they did have that now. Then he stayed up there and he met my mother over in Morgantown, West Virginia.
Right.
They got married. Then he built his glass shop. My sister was born. I was born 21st of January. She was born 23rd of January.
Were you born here or were you born
No, West Virginia.
In West Virginia.
Both of us.
Okay.
Even my father was born there. My father came here when he was 4 years old.
Okay.
I came here when I was 4 years old.
Okay.
Because the boom hit December 32.
Which boom is this, Don?
That's George W. Strait. That hit the first well here, what got things going.
Right. This is referred to as the Strait Field, the old Conroe oil field.
Old Conroe oil
This
field.
was 1932
when the first well, the things started motivating in the 30s and 40s.
Right.
And
so you were
I was 4 years old when I came.
You were 4 years old.
My sister was 3.
So from there you stayed here
Well, basically, I put it this way. They had good oil check money coming in from the oil field. They lived in Houston 3 years. I have a picture of me, and I have the little cane back there.
Yeah.
I was about 3 years or 4 or 5 years old. And they had me a picture of that little cane. I have it today.
Right.
And they lived down there 3 years in Houston, and Dad said, well, you better get back up here. So we lived in the oil field camp here for a few months. Then Granger, his brother, built a house up the road here on the right-hand side, and about 35, 6, somewhere along there. We lived in the house that he was on the right-hand side up here. We lived in there, I don't know how long, but out here we had free gas. So they was blowing the lines out. We had gas and blowing the lines out, water lines, sewer lines with gas, and it caught a fire, and my mother got burned in it. Our house burned down.
So this was natural gas.
Natural
that
gas.
The residents of, was it at that point during the 30s, was it called Granger land?
No, sir. No, it wasn't called Granger land.
But Highway 3083?
No, it wasn't even called that, because it was 1969 before the state took this over.
Okay.
I will get back a little bit further. So we had to go back to the camp. Then Daddy built this house over here, 36, 37. I moved in there. Then I went to the old Union Grove. It was built over on 1485. It was built in 1924. Then when I went over there in 36 then,
it was elementary school.
Yeah, it was elementary. It was Ben Mile Elementary then at that time. We didn't have a cafeteria, no air conditioning, no lights or nothing. One time when we had to get real cold, we'd have to sit around this wood heater over there.
How many grades were in the school?
First, second, third, fourth, fifth, I believe.
5 grades?
1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 6.
So this early elementary school,
7, 8, 9, yeah.
no
6.
lights, obviously no...
and we had outdoor toilet
outdoor
facilities.
toilets.
And what aggravates me when I go out there and use it, we had overhauls. I throw my things back. After one time, I didn't do that anymore. Anyway.
So now you're a young boy. You're going to elementary school. The oil field, Conroe is evolving.
Well, in the latter part, it started slowing down because the oil field camp up here, we had a grocery store, gas pump, a boarding house, and had about 30 units in there. Wood frame building with single wall, but the boom started settling down. They couldn't rent out. So they tore that down. In 1936, in the Manning survey right in the forks of the road, that's where he built the grocery store there. Then about 39, he built the service station. Where the station's at now, the old one's sitting behind it. And I can tell you why they had to make a change. Then he built the cafe there. Then in 48, the community building there. He sold the land for that community building. Well, let me back up a little bit. But you talk about this road here, it was all dirt roads. Now in 1939, they passed a bond issue to build the roads on the east side of the county for $2 million. What is known as the Porter Road today, 1314, that was in the bond referendum.
Right.
From the railroad tracks up here at 105, they came all the way through here and forked off all the way to 2090. Those were dirt roads. And I remember as a kid, I can still kind of visualize looking down toward Splendora Road, I could see where they were burning timber, logs, and so forth. Well, over here on 3083, we know now, up here at the big house, Granger's place, that was a dead end of the road. You had to go around the dirt road the other way what we know as 2090 and 1485.
To get over to Highway 75?
No, Highway 59.
Oh, 59.
To go
East Canton.
to
Okay.
New Caney
Yep,
at
okay.
that time.
So, but from here, could you get over to old 75, Highway 75?
From
Or
here,
you have to
yes.
go back to Conroe.
No, we'd have to go back this way
Okay.
toward Conroe.
Okay.
Now, on building that road, from the railroad track to the intersection up here, that was a concrete road. The only concrete road, to my knowledge, on that side of the east side of the county. And they had these little round reflectors in there.
Right.
And if you drove over them quite often, it'd tear up your tires.
Tear up the tires. Is this a reflector to separate
Yeah.
left and right?
Yeah, let the people, it was all the ways, let the people know this is the center line.
That's right.
So
So this is now what year?
that was about 39.
39.
39.
So by then, the original play in the oil field has diminished
China
somewhat.
dropped down a lot.
Okay.
And as you know, Conroe was just overpopulated at that time. I think
right.
at one time they stayed at 5,000 or 6,000 people.
How many people?
5,000 to 6,000.
5,000 to 6,000 people. Okay.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Then it started decreasing, because when I finished in Conroe in 48, then it was around 3,200 or a little less than 4,000.
So you went to elementary school here, and that school's name was?
All right, let me back up.
Okay.
Ben Mile Elementary. I went there through the 3rd grade. My mother wanted me to go in town. So in the 4th grade, I started in school in Conroe as Sam Houston Elementary.
Sam Houston. Okay.
And like I told you, and we had a nice auditorium there, a balcony up, a cafeteria down below. We didn't have a cafeteria, running water, anything out here, no lights or nothing. And
So in 39, there was still no power, no telephones?
no. I want to say the first phone we got in our house is 49, but it came in the latter part in there.
Yeah.
And then, let me get my thinker going here again.
That's okay.
I wanted to say
So-
when we got electricity, but it was, I want to say after the war.
After the war ended
Yeah,
in 46?
45.
47?
45.
45?
45. That what Daddy used for electricity, and the reason our house has electrical wire down here at the shopping center now we know of, he had a power machine in there, and he produced his own electricity for the business and had it up here for the house.
Okay.
And then I can't recall what year we got electricity out here.
So still now we're in the before World War II, we're still in the 30s. It still is not a community?
No.
Still just an unincorporated area?
Right, and we're not incorporated today.
I understand.
Yeah, but
But it has your name on the side.
well, what really got the name established here in the community, a lot of people knew it as Granger land when Daddy got things going down here. That is when we got the post office in 68.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to get the post office in 63 when I was coaching Cleveland. In 68 I was over here and we established the post office, and it came out of the grocery store.
Okay. So, Don, what does your dad do? And here you're in elementary school and junior high. What was the family business?
He did a lot of carpenter work.
Yep.
And during the oil boom, he got a couple of trucks. His uncle, his brother,
Yep.
he was hauling gravel and so forth. Like over here on the Crockett Martin Road. It didn't go all the way over to 105, and it had a sand and gravel pit in the back, iron ore pit in the back, close to that little cemetery over there. And he did like odds and ends like that. And then he got in the grocery business. Then he installed attic fans.
Give me an idea of, at this point now, we're in the, again, before the war, how many people were in your community?
Oh, good Lord.
Many?
It wasn't too many. Just about everybody knew everybody out
Of course.
there then.
Couple hundred?
And, maybe so.
That was it?
And most of the people own their own land
Yep.
and things like that. I got a picture over there that shows the Freeman, Beeson, Perry's, Vicks, Massey's, so forth. A lot of them old established people. And the ones that I know that first came here, to my knowledge, and I've checked with some of the family members, the Freeman Cemetery over here on 1485, they came here in 1850. The Vick Cemetery up here, about 3 miles from here, they came here in 1860. The first Wiggins was 1870. Then Perry's 1880, and I've been trying to get a lot of the people to give me this information, because as generation dies off, we don't have things in writing, we'll lose it, and things like that. So that's kind of the basics there. Now the first Ben Milan Elementary was built up here, and it's in the Granger survey. That was 1963, and
How did you get to school?
We had a bus.
Had a bus? Conroe bus?
They had a bus to pick us up. And this old Gulf Coast Road out here, they went all the way down there to Gulf Coast Camp, the oil field camp. Come back here, and we usually meet down there at the shopping center.
And it would take you into Conroe?
Take us into Conroe, and a lot of times, like me, he'd have me to open and close the door and tell the kids get in and out and so forth. Another thing about the shopping center down here, people liked it because we had things there, because we were under gas rationing during the oil boom. You couldn't run to Conroe. They'd probably go to Conroe once a week or every 2 weeks, but they could shop there. And then I remember back in the old days, politicians would come out here between where the store and the station was. That parking lot would just literally be full of people. Politicians get up there and tell you this and that and so forth. But one I remember as a young person, teenage, this fellow named G.P. Pearson. He came up and shook my hand. I'm G.P. Pearson. He's running for, I think, the House Representative for the state and so forth. And then two down there behind the grocery store and the cafe, they'd bring circus in here. And sometime these kids, it was the first time they ever saw a real tiger. Or
any kind of animal like that?
Yeah, any animal like that. Then they had a little Ferris wheel, and they had a swing-like thing.
So in these, the politics, you're still now in junior high school in that era. Was it Republican? Was it Democratic?
Mostly Democrats.
All Democrats.
Matter of fact, Montgomery County was a Democratic place, because years later, I was on a committee with the Democrats, and then I got off of it and ventured the other way.
Ah, good. So now you're a young man, you're in junior high school, you're going back and forth to Conroe. Where did you go to high school?
At Conroe.
How old is your sister now?
She's 1 year and 2 days younger than me.
Younger, so she was going to school with you?
She was going to school with me. And as you notice up here, I got Wild Man Woodman. I met him when I was about 5 or 6 years old. We knew each other all the way, went to graduate from Conroe, junior 2, and I was fighting the heavyweight man. I grew up real quick. I was the biggest, dumbest kid in class, but I grew up big quick, so I fought heavyweight. And
this was again in high school?
No, this was junior high.
Junior high, you're fighting.
I held my title 7th, 8th, and 9th. And 7th, 8th, 9th was in junior high. You went to high school as a sophomore, junior, and senior at that time.
Okay, so only 3 years in high school.
3 years in high school. Then a year I went to high school in 45, it might have been 46, they transferred over 4 grades. Then I think they dropped it back to 3 grades again. So my last year, then Roy Harris' daddy taught me boxing too. So we went out to our old place over here, 1485. I got a picture of the old home.
We're gonna look at these in a minute.
And he had back then we had free gas. Didn't cost us nothing. And he had a torch out there if we went out there and boxed at night. And I remember one time that this guy was a boxer, he's about 20 or 21, oh, strong as an ox. And Henry wanted me to box him. I said, him? Good gracious, he'd tear my head off. Old Woodman and I, we had an anvil out there, and we was picking it up, we struggling to get it over our head. He reached out there and grabbed that animal by one of the snout of it and held it out there. Well, back then I'd hit and move. Who fought John L. Sullivan, the guy that hit and move.
Right.
Well, that's where I was. And Henry tell me, Granger, get in there, O'Donnell, whatever it was. And I did one time, boy, he blacked me out here. But anyway, I enjoyed going over there, and he helped us a lot. But J.T. Montgomery was very instrumental in our years, in the early years.
So you boxed in junior high? Did you box?
I fought 2 years in high school, and my senior year I dropped out of it.
Yeah, did you have other sports while you were in school?
All right, my first year is football, boxing, and basketball. My second year, football, basketball, boxing, and track. My senior year, I was too old. Back then, your age eligibility was, if you was, I think, April the 15th, if you 19 after that day, you could play 19 years old your senior year. Well, I was
too old.
I was born January 21st.
Don, do you recall how many people were in school then?
We had 120 graduate that year, and that was the biggest class.
120, that was
48.
48.
And that's when it was a big class, because when I went into high school, this fella was in there. He was a senior. And when I finished high school, he finished as a senior. He lettered football 43, 44, 45, 46, 47. And his name was Hardy Dean. And there were 5 Dean boys in that family. And best of my knowledge, that the first All-American from Conroe High School was his oldest brother, Tom Dean, at SMU, and he made the second team All-American. Anyway, that was the reason I was a big class, because there was several of them could stay another year and play sports. And Woodman and I and 4 or 5 other boys, we went to Navarre Junior College on a football scholarship.
So you played all that time. You graduated. Again, you got a car by now? Are you still in the bus?
No, sir. Back then,
riding the bus.
Well, yeah. Or walk home or jog home. I remember one time I was up.
Wait a second, what was it, from Conroe to here?
Yeah.
How many miles is that?
That's 9 miles.
9 miles.
From downtown to here, 9 miles. And I remember one time I was coming back from town. I had a girlfriend in town, and I coming back, and I got tired of walking, so I ran about 7 miles to come on back home.
But that helped you in your track, didn't it?
Yeah, because I ran the miles in the track, and it just kind of kept me motivated and so forth.
Right. What do you recall in the early days during World War II?
Okay.
You recall what was going on in the county here? Not so much nationally, but what was going on in Conroe?
Mainly it was the oil field and timber.
Yep.
And you know, in Conroe, over close to I-45, they had a big sawmill plant. And over here on Waukegan Road.
Was that the Grogan's Mill?
I probably was.
Okay.
I forgot a lot of the names, but it was for the old 75 and I-45. There was a big mill in there, and sawmill. But then cattle. Cattle was an open range around up here to 1950, and they cut that down. And of course, you had to go out and gather up your cows, brand them, and so forth. So,
but the cows just ran in an open range.
Yeah, open range. And up here at Crater Hill in the winter months, they had that big old torch blowing gas out, lit up. You could see it from Conroe, and here you can see it easy. Matter of fact, right out here, about a 50 foot, 100 foot from here, there was a big old gas torch, and they had it lit up, and that's the reason Daddy put the bedroom windows on the opposite side, because this has lit up the whole area.
So it wouldn't.
Matter of fact, we had a well right out here, and I got a picture of it. that he used to drive his car up there and fill it up with gas and take off.
Is the term drip gas? Is that, I recall drip. What was drip gas?
Well, I just came to the restaurant, but I do know that they said it was hard on the accelerators and things like that, but it was still cheap gas. But gas down here at the old station, that was 9 cents a gallon.
Say again?
9 cents a gallon.
You said 9 cents a gallon.
They'll call it the white gas. And you could buy in the grocery store, you could buy a lot of things for a penny or a nickel and things like that. I remember we used to go down to Houston on old 59. There's a little shopping area in the place. You could get you a drink for a nickel and a hamburger for 10 cents. And at school, I think he gave me 25 or 35 cents when I was in high school.
Okay.
But talking about the war coming up, I remember over here, where Dry Creek, Cane Creek's up here, Dad and I, we were down there and hauling gravel out of the creek bottom. Somebody came up and told us about Pearl Harbor in bombs. Then I told you about this, but Monday morning, I was on that at Sam Houston Elementary, and we had a loudspeaker system there. We heard Franklin Delano Roosevelt declare war upon the Empire of Japan. And that was Monday morning, the 8th of December, and I'll never forget that.
And how old were you?
That was 42, I was 13.
13 years old.
Yeah, 13. And when I was on that planning committee with the school district, we had our meeting, and I had to tell them about that, and I still remember where the classroom was.
So now you've graduated from high school, Don. Your family, you're still out here.
Oh, yes.
Where did you go from high school?
Well, we went, 5 of us from Conroe went to Navarre Junior College, Corsicana. Corsicana was about 25,000. Conroe was a little less than 4,000, I believe, at that time. Oh, man, that was a big town.
So this is now 48, 49?
48.
48.
I graduated in 48. Woodman and I graduated in 48. And Woodman, Caveman, Billy Hobson, J.D. Bruce, and Aubrey Dean. They were 2 of us. Hobson and Dean was head of us, and they came up there. And our second year there, the Conroe boys stood out real good. In football, we had outstanding lineman, back, co-captain, and the freshman class Conroe, sophomore class Conroe, president of the student body was Conroe, most outstanding, this and that. And we all lettered in sports. I lettered in 3 sports for 3 years, football, basketball, and track. Woodman was football, track, and boxing. We had the others, baseball, like Hobson and some others, baseball. We had an outstanding year.
Sounds like.
What seemed like kind of sad, there's Corsicana right there, and the Conroe boys stood out.
How many students were in the school?
Oh, at that time, I don't recall,
Okay.
probably 300, 200. And it was just a junior college out there where the old airport used to be during World War II.
Okay.
And we lived in some of the bunker things, and the year I left there in 51, spring of 51, that's when 3 of us was up there at Wichita Falls. Wildman Woodman and I went up there, and Billy Hobson. That's when they opened up their college out there on the west side of town where it's established now.
Was there a certain thing you majored in? Was there everything
Oh, well,
general or?
it's your first 2 years is general subjects. You got to get your general science and English and history and all that behind you.
Do you recall by chance how much it cost to go for a year of college?
That's been a long time ago. We
It
were
was.
fortunate. What I did in the summertime, I worked in the oil field 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. Seemed like I was making 35, 45 cents an hour. Man, I was making a lot of money on that overtime. But I'd save my money, and that's how Woodman and I managed to. We save our money, and we had that spending money during the school year. Now, how did we get to hitchhike back and forth?
Still no car. Still no
Still
car.
no car. Except my last year in junior college. 3 of us got together and bought us a Model A. And we went up there in it, and it about 10 miles this side of Carson County, it broke out on us.
Okay.
But we did get up there. And then when I was up there, I bought a 36 Chevrolet Coupe, 2 doors, for about $70, $80. And that's what we run around. One time, I took my buddies with me, and there was 6 of us in there. We stacked on top of each other. Then when college came back home for that summer, after my years there, I gave to Daddy, and he bought a mattress out of it for it. But back in those days, it was hitchhiking wasn't no problem. People pick you up. I remember this fellow one time picked us up and said, "I'm tired of driving." Well, when y'all drive? We had to stop at Fairfield and get some gas. He gave me money, and we got to Carson County and said, "Boy, I appreciate y'all driving, because I just wore out." And I remember one time there was a lady and her little kid, and there's 2 of us picked us up. Now, like going to Huntsville, when you get on the road, you want to be in a town. Like Huntsville, Madisonville, Centerville, Buffalo, Fairfield, Carson County, Ennis, so forth like that. Because if you're out in between towns, they don't like to stop and pick you up like that. So we made a point to manage that way.
So you've been going back and forth. Colorado still has an oil field.
Mm-hmm.
There's still logging going on. You graduated from college.
Right. And in 1953, I had my bachelor's degree, and I went into the service. 53, and I was stationed in El Paso.
Which branch?
Army.
Army.
They drafted me. Matter of fact, they got it on me that I volunteered, because when I graduated in late May, that I wanted to get in there and get out, because they wait till June and give you 30 days, and I told them I was ready to go, and I found out later they said I volunteered for the Army. Anyway, stationed in El Paso years, 320 of us in basic training. I got the picture of it up there. 5 of us went to Nike Missile School in El Paso.
What kind of school?
Nike Missile.
That's what I thought you said. Missile school.
Missile school. 5 of us out of that whole bunch. And I was in the launcher. I think all 5 of us in the launcher section. What they do, they had, here's your radar system here, here's a missile they locked in, and the enemy plane coming, they lock in on it. And we have it all ready from the fire, and that plane wasn't going to get away from it. So we stayed there a year, and then we were transferred to San Francisco. But we were stationed there at Benicia, which is about 30-40 miles east of San Francisco, because they didn't have the base completed there for our missile site. And I think January, February, we moved into San Francisco.
What year was this now?
This was in 53, 54, 54.
54.
And
So you're still a single man now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, not married yet?
No.
Okay.
I didn't get married till 84.
Okay.
And then we could, for our base at, we could see down to see Alcatraz out there. That was active at that time. Then out of when we could see the Golden Gate.
Yeah. This is a missile base outside of San Francisco.
Uh-huh. We had missile sites set up looking out toward the Pacific.
Sure.
And they wanted me to, I was a corporal, and they wanted me to stay in. I said, no, I'm ready to get back.
Okay.
So after I got out of the service in 55, went back to Midwestern University and worked on my graduate work.
Where's Midwestern?
Wichita Falls.
Wichita Falls. So again, that's a 4-year school?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. It started out as a 2-year way back there. I did know the date when it started. I think in the 20s, but it slipped my mind. And the flag I got over at Midwestern University. It's Midwestern State University now. And like Sam Houston and all the others, it was Sam Houston State Teachers College or something like that, but they changed all that. So after the Army, I went back up there and worked on my master's. And I worked on the campus too in the spare time.
Was there a specialty that you were educating yourself in?
Yes, education.
Education.
Because I had my bachelor's degree in education.
Okay.
And I went up there to get my administrative certificate and a master's degree. Well, I didn't finish my master's, but I got all my administrative certificates.
Okay.
So I have a superintendent, principal, supervisor, elementary, secondary, and driver's ed. Anyway, left up there, worked in the oil field. That was January. Worked in the oil field until that fall. I started coaching at Cleveland.
So you've come back.
Came back here.
Come back to Granger land. Come back to this area.
Yeah. But see, being a single person, your residential area of your parents is where you're basically your address.
Right.
And
Okay.
even in my coaching years, I coached down in Cleveland 6 years, West Orange 3 years. I was down there. My basic address was back here.
Were you teaching? Were you coaching and teaching a subject?
Yeah. At Splendor, at Cleveland, I was teaching general science.
Okay.
Health 1 year in general science. I learned more than the kids did.
How many kids in your class?
Oh, we'd have 30 or 40 sometimes.
That many? Okay.
Okay. Then I went down to Orange.
And you're teaching what type of? You teaching football?
Oh,
Coaching?
I was coaching football. I was the
Coaching football?
head coach in junior high there. I had football, basketball, and track. I don't care if you live to be 116 years old. You'll never have an opportunity as this 4 years in high school. Think about it. And I've had some come around and coach. I appreciate you keeping me on the right track, things like that. What would I had for an education? Because my parents weren't able at that time to send me to college, and I didn't care about working in the oil field or a log hauler in our life. I really didn't know what I wanted to. And about my junior or senior year, then in athletics in college, so I got my education, rent property. Then I expanded it to my center, and I bought a house. And I made my investment here in our community. And like Woodman there, he was the only one in the family that got a high school diploma, a master's and a bachelor's, a master's degree and a bachelor's degree. Because we was inspired by our teachers and coaches back then.
That's right.
So, for your I remember one time this coach, he said, well, I came here to coach, I didn't come here to teach. He said, well, fine. We'll just pay you your coaching salary, forget your teaching. Well, I got his attention right quick, because about 90% plus salary is your teaching.
His teaching.
And then I had a principal one time who said, Coach, you're one of the best coaches and teachers I've ever had. And that was a compliment, because I took pride even in my classroom. I had everything organized, what we're going to do, this and that, what we can do, how I can cooperate with you if you cooperate with me. Matter of fact, my wife, she went up at Huntsville on an interview with, on something up there, talk committee, and the lady asked her, are you any kin to Mr. Granger? I said, yeah, that's my husband. She said, well, I got to take time out. He was my teacher at Conroe, and the first thing he told us, I expect your cooperation. If you don't cooperate with me, I won't cooperate with you.
Good.
And she said, I never have forgotten that. And
Good.
My husband and I, we tell our kids, you cooperate with mom and daddy, I will cooperate with you. So you never really do know. I had one guy, he failed my class, he didn't apply himself, and he wanted to come back. I said, you don't have to come back. No, it was a girl. And she said, Mr. Granger, I just didn't do it right. She came back, made a real good grade. And it just, when you see kids move off, I remember one time at Magnolia, the girl was valedictorian of the class, salutatorian, that she was in college in her second, I taught American history at Magnolia at that time, and she didn't have to take a class her first semester, she did a second. And her roommate kept asking questions, and her mother told me this. And how do you know so much about American history? She said, if you had Coach Granger, you would know.
You would know.
That was another compliment there.
So as you were teaching in Conroe and in Montgomery County, was this area now commonly referred to as Granger land? Is that the...
Well, before we got the post office here, it was kind of referred to Grangeland because we had the Grangeland grocery,
Right.
and so forth. Then in '57, Daddy built the hardware store here.
But the post office designated it as...
It put it on the map because, you know, New Caney and Porter is not incorporated as a city.
Right.
But they do have a post office. Now, post office is what puts you on the map.
Okay.
Then the highway department, you're coming out of Conroe on 105, hit 3083, Grangeland 7 miles. Over here, 59, Grangeland 12 miles. Right up here, 1485, the intersection 3083, Grangeland 2 miles. So the state of Texas. Now, you're talking about why I had to tear the old station down and build this one down here I have now was in '69 because the highway department took over the roads out here. And that got things opened up there.
Right away.
And something else I was trying to think of that. So we are recognized by the state on Highway 2090, 3083. As you know, coming from Willis, T's nursery exit,
Yep.
it used to be 3083 to the east. Then later they built that double bridge in there, and then the 3083 west hits 105.
That's right.
We pick up a lot of traffic, but when people come, they want to maybe bypass Conroe, and you maybe get over to 59, and they cut through this.
That's right.
And 77, 82, I think, I was talking to the highway department. He said this road is proposed to be a 4-laner. I said, well, when? He said, that's a good question.
That's right. When they find the money.
Yeah. Because like 105 between Conroe and Cleveland,
Yeah.
that should be a 4-laner at least, because a lot of traffic in there.
Okay. So now you're in your 40s now. You're obviously still working.
What now?
I said you're in your 40s.
Yeah.
And you got hired by Mr. Montgomery.
Mm-hmm.
How long did you stay working in Conroe?
I was at Conroe 12 years.
12 years.
And I was retired there in 85. 85, what was that? 56, I guess.
Yeah.
Then I tell people I retired when I had to go to work. I worked for me. A lot of times I kid. I worked for old man Granger. I kind of say, I remember one time I talked about that. He paid me $1 a day before I worked or not. And I remember one time I was kidding going on, and I left, somebody said, who is he talking about? Well, he's talking about himself. They didn't quite get it. But no, this place
So you've seen it go from a dirt road, walking 9 miles, 7 miles to school, to what it is today.
I remember my father was talking about once a year, his father, the grandfather, they would go in a wagon, horse and wagon, to Houston. And it would take them, they'd leave real early, it'd take them all day to get down there. And they'd spend 3 or 4 days down there buying stuff and that. It'd take them all to get back. And I remember the horse and buggy years out here. I remember the Model T, Model A's, and I remember the Crater Hill up here when that thing blew up.
Because one of the things that you remember, I forgot to ask you, how young are you today?
Today?
Yeah,
oh,
how young
I'm 82 and working on 9 months.
82. Okay.
And I thank the Lord every day.
But you mentioned something about one of the few disasters that Montgomery County had, and that was what? That was
Well, the Crater Hill up here when the thing blew up.
what blew up.
Well, they was drilling oil, and they went down to real high pressure gas.
Is this again a strake well?
Yes. Well, no, not straight well at that time. He got things started, but a lot of others got going. But when they drilled down there, 5200, but they drilled down and hit that gas. Well, that gas started bubbling around, and they didn't have mud in there to keep it. And that's why some of the wells, and one of the wells up there, the whole crew and everything went down because it bedded out the ground around, and they wasn't aware of it, and boom. Then for I think a couple weeks there was fire going on up there, and they finally got it down. And I remember up there at Crater Hill, we worked on a well in there, and we had to pump gas down in there, make sure we keep the gas pressure, mud down there, keep the gas pressure down. In a big old pond over there, the oil was bubbling up, and they'd go in there and pump it out every now and then. Then up here on the road here, about 2 miles, on the left-hand side, they was working on a well there, just before you make the curve there. About 6 or 8 joints blew out of the ground, cross out on the highway because they didn't put mud in there to keep it down. So this was the high-pressure gas oil.
Now this is running 5,000 foot?
Yes, 5200 is basically the main field. Now I found out over here on the Far Tower Road, and why they call it a far tower, back in the old days, the 30s and 40s, they did have a far tower up there as a reserve. But they drilled a well back in there about 6 or 7 years ago, 13.5, and it's a good producing well. And why don't they develop what we have here? Good question.
It's a pleasure. It's been a real pleasure. My name is Butch Bateman, continuing our series of Rural History programs.